Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing some Summer-Ween DIYs. For this first project, I grabbed these frames from my local thrift store. They were kind of cute as they were, but I did want to dull down the pink flowers a little bit, especially on the smaller oval one. So I just went in with some of my European Gold Rub and Buff and went over all the flowers and the leaves on these frames. Otherwise, for these frames, I just left them the way they were. For the background, I'm going to be using this scrapbook paper that I have. It's a really pretty black floral and script paper, and I'm just actually going to attach this to the backing of the frames. So I'm just using some Mod Podge, doing a light layer on these, and then I will just lay my scrapbook paper on here and press it down nice and firm and make sure there are no bubbles or lines anywhere. Then I just did the exact same on the rectangle frame, and once I had these on here, then I did go back in and do a nice thick layer of Mod Podge on top of here, and once it was dry, I just sanded off the edges to get the excess paper off. You can really use any paper background for this, but I just thought the darker color was a nice contrast to the little ghost that I'm going to be putting in here. Once those were dry, I just popped them back into the frame, and then I'm gonna grab some of this white tissue paper that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just gonna be taking one sheet, folding that in half, and then I'm gonna kind of push my finger up into the center of it in a little spot to make a little ghost, and then I'll cut that down and again just kind of shape it and squish it together to make a little ghosty. This one happened to be just a little too big, so I just went ahead and trimmed it down just a little bit to fit into this smaller oval frame. Then again, I just kind of squished it and shaped it around until I was happy with it. And I'm going in now with some Mod Podge, just a nice light layer so that I can lay this on top of there. Then once I have my ghost laid down, I will go back in with a thicker layer of Mod Podge on top of here. And as you can see, I'm just kind of holding it in place where I want it as I am putting this Mod Podge over top of it. You don't really need to worry about the center part being flat to the back of the frame because this is kind of supposed to look 3D, like the little ghost is coming out of it. But just make sure that you get all of the edges down nice and tight against the backing. So for my larger frame, I did the exact same thing, but this time I made my ghost just a little taller, then just repeated the process of applying the Mod Podge to the background, laying the ghost down, and then Mod Podging over it. Once everything was nice and dry, then I went back in with just a Sharpie marker and made their eyes, and then finally, just to kind of age them up and make the paper not look so new, I went in with some antiquing wax and a small brush and just brushed it over them in random places and kind of blended that in with my finger. Is one that I wanted to do last year but never got around to it. So I grabbed this wood round from Dollar Tree, and as you can see, I'm just taping up those holes on the bottom side, and then I'm going to flip this over and fill it with some wood filler. I let the wood filler dry for a few hours, and then I sanded that down, and I'm going to go in with 2 coats of my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. Then I got on my computer and I just Googled man in the moon template template and found this cute little template that I traced out onto some regular computer paper. You could also just print this off, but I didn't want to waste any printer ink. Then I grabbed 2 sheets of my carbon paper that I get from Amazon, and I cut that second one down so that I could fit this over the wood round, and then I taped it down, and I'm gonna tape my Man on the Moon template on top of my carbon paper and just use my little tool that came with it to trace out all the little areas on this template. Once I had his face transferred onto the wood round, then I just used a Sharpie marker and started outlining everything and filling everything in. Of course, you can paint this, but I just find it easier to use a marker. For this project, I'm using this little vase with the handles that I found at the thrift store. Since it was very glossy and I didn't want to have to use a ton of paint, I decided to do the first layer using some Rust-Oleum flat white spray paint. Once it was completely dry, then I brought it back inside and mixed up some of my white chalk paint with a little bit of baking soda, and I'm just using a big fluffy brush and dabbing this baking soda and paint all over this vase. And since I had primed it with that first coat of white spray paint, I only needed to do this once. Once it was completely dry, then I'm gonna take my pencil and I'm going to make some little eyes and a mouth so that I can turn this into a little ghost pot. And if you do this, I do highly recommend using a pencil first, just in case you mess up, then you can just paint over those pencil lines, which is exactly what I had to do with the first go around, but I ended up making it a second time, and then I'm going in with a liner brush and some of my black chalk paint, and I'm gonna do the outline first, and then I will use a larger paintbrush to fill in those eyes and the mouth. And instead of just using this for a vase, I decided this would be a really cute pot to store candles. For this project, I'm going to be using this large cement pumpkin that I've had for quite a few years now. As you can see by looking at the bottom of it, it was gray when I first bought it, and throughout the years, I just kind of change it up whenever I want to go with my decor. As you can see from last year, this was painted a burnt orange and white color, but this year I figured I would actually just use this more in my Halloween decor. So I started out by painting that stem with a small brush and some of my apple barrel acrylic paint in the color burnt umber. And for the first coat, I wasn't too concerned about getting the paint on the pumpkin because as you can see here, I am going to go in and paint this entire thing white. So I did 2 coats over the entire thing, and then of course anywhere that I had gotten paint on the stem or vice versa, then I just touched it up with a small paintbrush. After it dried completely, then I'm going to go in with some of these alphabet stamps that I got from Amazon and some of my archival ink. And I just kind of started stamping Halloween themed words all around this pumpkin. As you can see, I did try to start out using my acrylic block, but since the shape was a little bit lumpy on here, it was too difficult. So I just went in with each individual letter and just kept stamping my way around this pumpkin to do the first line. And then once I have that first line done, then I'm just going to continue down to the next line and continue stamping Halloween words all the way around this pumpkin. And I'm not sure if you can tell really in the video, but some of the words I did a little darker with the ink and then some just a little lighter, and this doesn't have to be perfect. Again, it's for Halloween, so I just continued all the way down my pumpkin. Then to finish the pumpkin off, I am going in with some of my European Gold Rub and Buff, going over that stem, and then also I ended up using it in between the little crevices on the pumpkin just to age this up a little bit and not make it so new and white. For this project, I'm going to be using these little wood trivets that I found at the thrift store. As you can see, they are already a little dented up and banged up, but they'll definitely work great for a Halloween project since they are already kind of old and grungy. I am going to remove those little feet on the bottom of these so that I can make these into hanging pictures. I'm going to be covering these a little later on with some paintings from my Etsy shop, but I did want to cover the images on the little ceramic plates. I ended up doing 2 coats of this Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster, but I do wish I would have done a darker color instead. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a little bit, but now I am going in and I'm just working with these aged frames and aging them even more. I'm using a little bit of some tan colored wax that I made, just using some clear wax and mixing a few drops of tan paint into that clear wax. So the goal is to make these look as old and dingy as possible. I just worked this wax over both of these frames, just using a paper towel and just kind of blending it on top of there. I let both of these completely dry with that first layer of wax, and then I'm going to go in with some black wax that I made. Again, this time I just mixed some antiquing wax with a few drops of black acrylic paint to make this wax. And for this one, I'm just applying it with a dry rag. And yes, I did get some on the white paint, but again, I'm not concerned about that because like I said, I could have painted these dark anyway. Like I said at the beginning, I want to add some images from my Etsy shop. So I have this rice paper that I got from Amazon. I'll have it listed in my Amazon storefront, but I chose these 2 images and printed these on that rice paper on the textured side. And you don't need a special printer or anything. I just used my inkjet printer to print these. Now, I wasn't exactly sure if the ink would run on these or not, so I decided to do the iron-on method with these. I applied a nice layer of Mod Podge over the top of both of these ceramic pieces, and then I let them completely dry. Then I'm going to line my image up exactly where I want it on this piece, and I'm going to put a piece of parchment paper over top of it and just use my little mini iron to go over this for about a minute. I'll have this mini iron linked in my Amazon storefront, but I do have this on a 300 degrees setting, and I'm making sure that I'm getting all of the edges as well. Then I did the exact same thing for my other one. And when you're doing this, just make sure that you are continuously moving the iron so it doesn't burn your image. Now for the first one, to remove the excess, I did start out by trying to use some sandpaper, but it just wasn't working the way I had hoped. This one especially has a little lip on this ceramic piece, so it just wasn't getting it how I wanted it. Then I tried a little box cutter, just cutting away the paper, and again, it still just had some ragged edges that I didn't want. And it was kind of ripping the paper on the sides instead of cutting so that you could see that white paint under here. I do go back in just a little bit and kind of fix the edges of this one, but I did want to go around it and do a little layer of Mod Podge all over those edges. Now for the round one, I found my X-Acto knife and was able to just cut this all the way around the edges. And to go back in and fix those edges, I am just using some of that black wax and a really small paintbrush and just going inside all those little crevices around the edges so you can't see the paint underneath. For this project, I went out into my yard and just grabbed a couple of these little sticks. And then I'm also going to be using some of these cinnamon scented little brooms from Dollar Tree. Now, for all of these, I did end up unwrapping everything so that I could just make these the way I wanted to. I wanted each of them to be a little bit different. And also, I didn't want them to look so uniform. So for this one, I ended up pulling apart those little broom bristles, placing my stick down in there, wrapping it around, and then I'm going to use some twine, wrap this around a couple times, and then tie it at the back. Then, like I said, for each of the other ones, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I am unwrapping them how they came from Dollar Tree, and then I'll just kind of move the bristles around to make them each look a little different. I also ended up cutting some of the sticks a little shorter so that each one was vary in height, just because I want to put these into a vase that I have and kind of do like a witch's broom floral arrangement. And since that was my plan for these, I have these dried flowers that I got from Amazon, and I'm just gonna pick a few per witch's broom and kind of make each one a little bit different but still similar. And then I'm grabbing this gold velvet ribbon that I've had also from Amazon, and I'm gonna glue that to the back of my broom and then wrap it around to cover that twine. And I think these would be cute just laying around maybe in a few different places around your house in your Halloween fall decor. But like I said, I have this beautiful milk glass container that I put mine in. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.